Hey everyone, Catch 'em All Collectibles here. In today's video, I'm going to discuss 3 big mistakes many Pokemon investors make. I say investors could apply to speculators, flippers, scalpers, collectors, whatever you want to call yourself, depending on how you interact with the hobby. These things could apply to you. And I mentioned that a lot of these mistakes I made myself, and avoiding them up front, the quicker you can resolve them, the better, generally speaking. And as with most videos, I need to have some disclaimers that I am not a financial advisor. I am not a CPA. Both of these will be very relevant to mistake number 2 that people make. I am literally just some guy on YouTube, and this is for entertainment purposes only. So mistake number 1 that I see a lot of people make is not structuring as a business. Essentially, per Investopedia, investing is the act of allocating resources, usually money, with the expectation of generating an income or profit. And then, very important, again, at the bottom of the disclaimer, but here we also have an IRS publication where you can read through and determine whether or not the activities that you're undertaking in the Pokemon hobby qualify as a business or a hobby. Very specific guidelines as to how to define that. So review that ideally with a professional to determine whether or not structuring as a business is right for you. But it very well may be if you are intending to profit. That's generally what it comes down to with the IRS. If you're profiting, they want a cut of that naturally. So part of the things that hold you back by not structuring as a business, a lot of these Pokemon investors are paying sales tax on items intended for resale. Again, not advice in any way, but generally speaking, when you buy inventory to be resold later on for a profit, you do not pay sales taxes on it. Where I live in New York, that's an 8.75% discount essentially on everything I buy. Last year I made a video, or this year I made a video on last year's purchases. I spent over $500,000 on Pokemon alone. That's $40,000 to $50,000 in taxes, sales taxes I would have had to pay that would have directly come out of my bottom line. I mean, that's a very significant thing that if you're acting as a business, you really should just consult a professional and structure properly as a business to avoid paying sales tax where you don't need to. Another thing, especially during 2020 and 2021, even right now with certain products, the ultra premium collection, Evolving Skies, Brilliant Stars, having access to wholesale distribution in 2020 was massively valuable. You couldn't get all you wanted of everything, but whatever allocations you got for UPCs were just an immediate triple up. We don't know if or when we will ever experience a 2020 again, but having yourself positioned today or as soon as possible for the next time that it potentially happens, that's the only way it's going to work. It's not going to work picking up the phone 6 months into the Logan Paul pandemic boom and trying to get into distributors. I think right now, I know at my distributors, a lot of them have as much as you want of Fusion Strike, Battle Styles, and Chilling Reign. Most people don't want those. Most of those things are available for cheaper on eBay than I can get on my distributor. But this is the time, if you're ever going to try to get in with a distributor, start trying now so that you're positioned for next time, potentially an explosion in the hobby. Another thing too that I see come up a fair amount, when I created my eBay account back in 2004, 18 years ago, it's crazy to think that, it's crazy to say it, there weren't really many limitations like there are today. I haven't created an account in a long time. I buy through one and I sell through one. It just makes paperwork and accounting easier to have those two separated. But when I created mine, there weren't these really low monthly limits. There weren't all these intricacies of essentially account limitations is the main thing. I've seen instances where somebody creates an account, they can only sell 1,000 a month or list 1,000 at any one time. How are you going to sell your $5, $10, $50,000 in modern booster boxes or vintage slabs? How are you going to sell it if you literally can't list it on eBay. So I encourage everyone to go through the motions of creating an account, learning to sell. I think it more than having an exit plan for if and when you ever do need to sell. I think the experience you gain from selling items, instead of being on the buyer side of the transaction, experiencing the seller side on occasion, just to get the feel for it. I think it really is valuable to anybody, broadly in life, but also very much in the hobby. And then another thing, selling on eBay will generate some tax documents. It will get you used to the motions of that. Again, being a business, you can't just buy. You do need to sell occasionally. It has you ready to pivot in case you see opportunity in one product over another and you want to allocate investment capital from one item into another. It gives you the option. There are options where you don't have to directly sell: PWCC, Heritage, Golden. I mean, you can even use eBay indirectly through Scott, Rusty, Nick, James, things like that. But having some kind of an experience, either directly selling on eBay or consigning indirectly, I think it's valuable just to go through that and be ready if and when you ever do need to sell. Because ultimately, again, if you're investing, selling is inherent in that process, because eventually you need to realize those gains, right? So preparation is very valuable. Number two, that ties in very directly, I mentioned it in my disclaimers, consulting CPAs and consulting financial advisors, consulting proper professionals where necessary. Very, very important. My first few years, I did mention these all apply to me. Since 2014, I have been structured as a business, because pre-Pokemon, I did Steins, I did video games, I did coins, and I kind of went through my bumpy ride in my college years, roughly late 2000s, early 2010s. I was selling without being properly structured as a business, without having met with an accountant. And I remember getting my first 1099, which was harder at the time. You had to spend, or you had to sell 20,200 transactions. But I remember getting that for the first time and then going to an accountant. A lot more expensive, a lot more stressful. Doing that up front is, again, preparation. Preparation is huge. I knew the quote, but I didn't know who to attribute it to, but Robert Burton, apparently, penny wise and pound foolish. I think it's being very penny wise and pound foolish. Oh, I don't want to talk to an accountant. They charge $150 an hour, whatever they charge around you. I think that is very penny wise. You're saving the $150 at the cost of much more. Many, many times, if you're operating with a profit motive, being structured as a business, for me, between me and my accountant, we decided that me, my accountant and my attorney that set up my corporation, we determined that an S corporation was the proper structure for the way that I was doing business. The only way they were able to determine that is because I brought to them all my information, how I operate, what I've made over the past few years, and that was what was right for me. That's going to be right for some of you, maybe an LLC, maybe a sole proprietorship, maybe something else entirely. I am not, again, a financial advisor or tax advisor, and you should consult one, because the small amount of money that I paid to my CPA to structure me that way has allowed me, again, and this is very crucial. Sometimes people nitpick semantics. Semantics are very important when it comes to tax strategies, because avoidance and deferral are good business, whereas evasion is illegal and can land you in jail. So consulting with a CPA and structuring yourself properly and getting the right write-offs and documenting it all properly can allow you to avoid paying some taxes that you otherwise would if you weren't accounting for things the right way. And I mean, an example of that are basic write-offs for if you're driving to the post office, the gas mileage and all that to go deliver the packages, packing supplies, shipping supplies, ink toner, computer, internet potential. Like, again, consult your CPA for what you can write off, but those are types of tax avoidance, lowering your tax liability through legal means within the bounds of the law. And then deferral, tax deferral is a huge thing in investing broadly, not even just in Pokemon, but like the use of 401ks, Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs, being able to defer some amount of taxes to retirement. Again, consult with a financial advisor on all of that, but it is very penny wise and pound foolish to not be properly strategizing for optimizing your tax situation. And another one that I wanted to include that I made a video on a few months ago, insurance. Big part of investing is avoiding wipeout risk. If you lose it all, it really is a huge setback. And I know there's a lot of people, I've read stories, I've seen stories in some of the Facebook groups, people's collections being stolen, people's houses burning down and their entire investment portfolio, their entire inventory being lost altogether, shipping a huge package to PSA or back from PSA or to PWCC vault, eBay vault, and it being lost and uninsured. I have a business insurance through Will Post. I left his contact information in the prior video with Collect Insure. And that allows me to pay a small monthly premium to have all my inbound and outbound packages covered if one were lost. Thankfully, I've never personally had to make a claim yet, but I do have friends who are insured through the same company who have made claims. And it's a very real insurance policy that will cover, as long as you use one of the major three, USPS, UPS, FedEx, and you have it insured. Signature required, obviously not insurance. You don't have to buy the insurance from USPS, UPS, or FedEx because you're getting it as long as you use signature confirmation. They will insure it. You need to talk to, again, you need to consult a professional insurance salesperson, and you need to consult with them to determine what's the right coverage for you, if coverage is right for you. I mean, depending on your scale, depending on very, very low limits, you might have $1,000 or $5,000 worth of coverage through your homeowner's policy or your renter's policy, but oftentimes you don't, and oftentimes it doesn't go above that. So depending on where you are, consult with a professional. Insurance salespeople will speak to you for free. A lot of times accountants and attorneys and financial advisors, you do have to pay a fee to even talk to them up front. Some varies so much by location, and so do taxes too. That's why you really need to consult a professional local to you and not just get all your advice from anyone on YouTube. So I think we covered that one. Sales tax and all that, very, very geographically specific. Apologies to international viewers. This is largely US centric, but a lot of these things will still apply. Every country has some form of taxes, import, export, sales taxes, income taxes. Every locality has something. Every jurisdiction has something. So consult a professional local to you to help work through all that. And that's why I don't get really too specific on what's required for structuring as a business, because the professionals local to you can guide you through that. And me in New York is going to be different than somebody down in Tennessee, somebody over in California. All the forms are different names. All the terminology is just slightly different. So the third big mistake that I think many modern, not even just modern vintage, any Pokemon investors altogether, past performance does not guarantee future results. Might be a familiar sounding quote. I quoted it from SEC Rule 150. I don't think SEC Rule 156 explicitly states that. It's a very lengthy rule if you want to Google it and check it out. But it's basically a rule made by the Securities Exchange Commission that doesn't allow mutual funds or index funds to use as a selling tactic. Hey, we've returned this much every year over the past 10 years. We're going to do that again. Just because we've done it in the past does not mean it will do it in the future. So that's a disclaimer. If you've ever read the prospectus of any holding in your 401k or in your IRA, which realistically you should at least read the overview page, you'll read that, and people need to keep that in mind. No one's going to put that on on this card. No one's going to put that on a PSA or a CGC card. No one's going to put that on an Evolutions booster box because these things aren't securities. They aren't governed by the SEC, but that still very much applies to Pokemon. Just because 2010 to 2020 was a decade where the line went like this. I mean, we went like this and then we went like this. We all boarded the rocket ship. There was a massive tailwind for my first 6 years in the hobby from 2014 to 2020. We actually had a discussion about this last night. I'm recording this Monday morning, actually. Last night was our Patreon meeting, me, Jake, and then we had Rusty, TCA Gaming, as a guest. And somebody asked us a question. Does Rusty think that what he did, or do I think that what we did is replicable? Could somebody start today and do the same thing over? What we basically, paraphrasing heavily, kind of what the three of us all said, the motivation and the effort and the time, gaining the knowledge, that stuff is largely replicable. You can actually gain the knowledge quicker than you could back in 2010 because there's so much more information out there. Numbers are bigger, so it takes a lot more capital to get going in many ways, but liquidity is a lot higher too, generally speaking. Lower in 2022 than it was in 2020. But the main thing that we have no way of knowing until 10 years from now, once we gain the hindsight that we have now on 2010 to 2020, the luck or the fortune in our timing, just due to when we were born. When we were born, when we experienced the hobby initially, when we got back into it, largely luck that we got in when the chart looked like this. Anyone who got in since 2022, the chart looks like this. And it could look like that for the next 10 years. 2020 to 2030 could look more like 1999 to 2003 did. And for anyone who wasn't around then, 1999, it was booming. It was massive. It was, in many ways, I feel like it was more ubiquitous than it is today. I'm not 9 now. I'm 32. So it's hard to say. I'm experiencing it differently as an adult. It is so much of my day-to-day, every day, but I don't think it's as big. Like, my wife's a teacher, a handful of her students are into it, but it's not as massive on the playground as it used to be. So 1999, it was ubiquitous. 2003, that's about when I got out of it. Sapphire was the last game I had played. I was done collecting the cards for a year or two by then. And then 2003 to 2010, you're talking EX era or E-Series era to Heart Gold, Soul Silver era. Very, very low points for the hobby. Rusty, actually, his presentation he gave last night on like his history in the hobby, very, very interesting. 10-pack bundles of Fossil First Edition for $15. Base Unlimited Charizards, buying them for $5 and selling them for $10. Entire base set first edition sets for $600-700. I'm not saying we're going to go back to those prices, but we could go back to an era. No one has any way of knowing. No one has a crystal ball. We could go back to an era where liquidity is just low. Prices kind of trend down, trickle down over time. Sales are just hard to come by. We really could have a low. No one has any way of knowing past performance. Again, even stating past performance does not guarantee future results. Some people take the 2016 to current time period and try to project forward all of that, when there is other past performance you should look at that is also relevant. 2003 to 2016 was also a time period. I mean, that was half of Pokemon's existence, and it was very, very different, distinctly different than 1999 to 2003 and 2016 to current. So not only does past performance not guarantee future results, but picking out the best 5-year, 3-year, 2-year, 1-year portion of past performance, that does definitely not guarantee future results. And another kind of potential headwind that people are dealing with in today's time period, especially if we were to experience a retraction moving ahead, 9.1 billion cards were printed in 2021. I did a video last week demonstrating the size of that, literally enough cards that if you stacked them end to end, I've got my VMAX Climax cards here. If you stack them end to end, you could go to the moon and back and then around the earth with 9.1 billion cards stacked end to end. And I've seen the argument that they printed a ton during WotC. 9.1 billion cards too. It equates to slightly over 20% of all Pokemon cards ever printed in a 25-year time frame were printed in the last year. We don't have exact numbers for 1999 or anywhere, any year prior to like 2017. We don't have exact numbers for. But an estimation that I did in a past Patreon presentation, that's roughly on par with what was printed in 1999. So one thing that 1999 has going for it, it is the original. It's the first. It's base set. It will always be the first. 25 years from now, the first set will still be the first set. 25 years from now, 2021, we'll have clearly 9.1 billion cards were printed because they were demanded. That was the supply that Pokemon needed to put out. In spite of 9.1 billion cards being printed, Evolving Skies is still 150 plus, 160, I think. Brilliant Stars is still up there. A lot of these sets are still unavailable at wholesale distribution. There's only 3 sets that are widely available, which I mentioned earlier. So the argument there is kind of base is doing well 25 years later, even though they printed so much because there were so many people that got back into it, nostalgia and all that. 20 years from now, there might be so many people familiar with the 2021 time period that they get back into it. Attrition rates, that's a different video entirely. Pop reports, attrition rates being so low, so many people investing in the sealed product. But anyways, what I'm trying to get at is so many cards were printed this year. If we go into a lull, if we go into a downturn, base, fossil, jungle, unlimited packs were selling for $1 a piece. I'm not saying Evolving Skies are going to be selling for $1 a piece in 5 years. In many ways, it'd be great for collectors. But in many ways, it wouldn't be either because the implications of that, the hobby would be really low. It would be really, really down. And when prices are so low, people just don't list and sell certain things. Businesses go away. And yeah, like you might not, things might be cheap, but you might literally, it might never come on the market because nobody's selling it. Kind of getting into tangents there and different kind of topics, but yeah, that's the main thing I wanted to cover as the third mistake, potentially extrapolating from very small time windows into the future as if it's guaranteeing that it's going to replicate, and very much not the case. And if you do want to take past performance as an indicator of future results, take all of them. Alola isn't, to me, Alola is inevitable. Like I don't think every year from now on, we're going to print more than 9.1 billion cards. I have no evidence towards this. I have no proof, but I would be shocked if that were a new low moving ahead and every year were to be subsequently higher. I'd expect this number to come down at some point, which would mean the broader demand comes down at some point. Could be wrong in hindsight. Maybe I'll revisit this video in 5 years when we're printing 20 billion cards a year. But anyways, that's my last mistake. Quick recap. Structure as a business. If you have a profit motive and if the professionals that you consult say that it is the ideal way for you to go. Maybe you consult with a professional. Oh no, what you're doing is a hobby. You're fine doing it as a hobby, but get that confirmation, because generally speaking, if you're operating with intent to profit, and especially if you are profiting, likely the IRS wants a cut of that. Likely you're operating as a business to some extent, and past performance does not guarantee future results. So there's a recap of the 3 mistakes Pokemon investors, speculators, flippers, scalpers, businesses, collectors generally make. In closing, I just want to say it's my Monday video. I always like to give a schedule for the week. So this week, I'm not going to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, as I generally do. I'm going to do Monday, Thursday, and then I'll throw in a bonus video on Saturday, MetaZoo. So for anyone who's Pokemon only, don't tune in on Saturday. I always keep those ones to Saturday because primarily this is a Pokemon channel. Exciting news, though, to announce Saturday. But anyways, Thursday, I'm just going to do kind of a market discussion. I'll try to not make it too long-winded, but some of my recent purchases, some of my recent not purchases, some of the items that I was outbid on, some of the big heritage blocks that we had, trophies, boxes, things like that. Saturday, I'm going to do a MetaZoo partnership discussion. So anyone who's in the Patreon, they saw announced in Discord, anyone who's in the MetaZoo Discord, if you have announcements turned on, you saw that I was announced as an official partner with MetaZoo now. And anyone who's in the Pokenomics Patreon, I posted a screenshot of that announcement there. What a partnership means, and I'll get way deeper into it on Saturday. It means that I can buy wholesale product, not just from a distributor, but from MetaZoo directly. So I'm getting it substantially cheaper than it, like, I'm getting it substantially cheaper. The MSRP on a MetaZoo box is 140. Pokemon, it's 144. I'm getting a substantial discount to MSRP, higher than that of what I get on Pokemon. I don't believe I'm allowed to share the exact amount, but I can only sell it at 80% of retail. I cannot go under 80% of retail. That's called a minimum advertised price. I'm going to do an in-depth discussion on what minimum advertised price means, how it's going to affect me, and my broader thoughts on how the map will work when it comes to UFO's release and all that. Normal things at the end. I appreciate everyone watching. If this was useful to you, please like, subscribe. If you have anything useful to add, if you think I missed big points, number 4, number 5, if you have problems with numbers 1 through 3, let me know in the comments below. Any ideas for future videos are always welcomed. One other thing I want to shout out, PokeFlips. Thursday, we're going to have Cam and James on from ZNG Emporium. So go to our last podcast episode, not the clip we cut out, not the highlight that we do, but 2 weeks ago, go to the podcast episode and leave a question in the comments if you want to ask me, Nick, James, or Cam, or anything. And then, yeah, as always, there's an affiliate link. If you buy anything through my affiliate link on eBay, gives me a kickback without any cost to you. And then the Patreon is always there. Great discussion last night with Rusty. I uploaded it this morning. So if you subscribe later on, you get access to every monthly Zoom meeting, the video. You get access to Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. Jake does an office hour for an hour. He's in Discord voice, available to everyone to have a chat about anything. I do Thursdays, 9 a.m. Eastern for an hour. And the Discord, all the files, all the documents that we've created, the spreadsheets are shared with people. So great community there, great group of people. Yeah, that's everything. I appreciate you all watching, and I will catch you all later.